even really simply, like to make a sort of stupid point of it, if you want an agent to do something for you, you should probably know what it is you want them to do. And I don't think many lawyers or a head of a legal team could actually really articulate what that thing is straight off the bat.
I'm Hal Marcus.
And I'm Memme Onwudiwe.
And this is Meeting of the Minds, the legal AI podcast from Evisort.
We interview lawyers, professors, and legal operations pioneers that are pushing the envelope.
Leaders using technology to drive great business outcomes and shape the future of the profession. Hey, Memme, it's that time again.
Yeah, really looking forward for today's conversation. You know, we interviewed someone I've been wanting to talk to for a while, Alex Herrity. He's the director of global legal solutions for adidas. And he's also the co-founder and co-host of the Law What's Next podcast. I was actually a guest on that podcast a few months back. It was a lot of fun and excited to have Alex here with us.
I heard that episode. And by the way, I think this is a mandate. I think in 2026, every legal technology podcaster needs to be on every other legal technology podcast. Okay, can we just make that a rule? And I've never met Alex before today, but I got to dine with his co-host, Tom Rice, at a dinner in Barcelona, of all places, not that long ago. This was during our Workday Rising EMEA event, and we co-hosted a dinner with CLOC, Corporate Legal Operations Consortium. And Tom was there. We sat next to each other, had a great conversation with him. And we had a great conversation with Alex. We spoke about legal's readiness or lack thereof for agentic AI. We addressed the rumors of the premature death of CLM. We talked about the differences between legal ops in the US and EMEA. They spell it with an S. We spell it with a Z otherwise. And the current state and the future, hopefully, of legal operations.
Awesome. Well, I know we might have folks listening from all over the world today, so let's light this candle.
Alex Herrity, thanks for joining us here on Meeting of the Minds, the Legal AI podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Alex, you know, you started your career as a legal counsel, but then you veered your career more towards legal ops. Could you take us through a little bit of your journey?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's been a fun journey, but yeah, I was a lawyer working in-house, and I guess just my personality-wise, I always say to people, like, it's half driven by sort of a curious mind and the other half a lazy mind. So sometimes I'm just like, yeah, being an in-house counsel, you're doing tons of repetitive work, particularly in contracts. I was a commercial lawyer, so contracts was my bag. And yeah, I just had a few opportunities to try and do things in a faster and smarter way. And I had the support of a really good general counsel who was like, yeah, go do it, go figure some stuff out. And we had a few sort of random things that happened where we had a challenge, we had a project we were working on, and we just thought, hey, there's got to be a better way of doing this. There's no budget. You're not allowed to buy any third-party tech. So can you find a way to do this? And I ended up like basically coding. I mean, it's not even coding. It was like writing really complex macros for like VBA back in the day. So like just using what we had to hand to sort of basically make a little contract generator. And it took like data from an Excel file and made like bespoke contracts or bespoke letters from that file. And it ended up like churning out thousands and thousands of these documents every year. And that just got me the reputation for being the legal tech guy. I don't know if that was founded or not, but it was at least because he was like, this guy, he's willing to put the effort in and try and figure out some of this stuff. And yeah, that was kind of around the time where some of the larger corporates were like, oh, legal ops is a thing now that you might have in an in-house department. That's like 2017 kind of time. And they were like, yeah, do you want to do this? Do you want to sort of put being a lawyer on the day-to-day to the side and focus more on this stuff? And it wasn't an easy decision. Like I really enjoyed being a lawyer. I know a lot of legal ops people kind of down on being lawyers and say like, oh, I'm a recovering lawyer and all those like usual jokes, which I do appreciate and get.
Never heard that one. Don't know.
Never heard that one. Oh yeah, I'm a recovering lawyer is what a lot of people say. But yeah, for me, I actually really love being a lawyer, but I also kind of love just playing around and trying to figure out these problems and play with tech and see what we could do. So yeah, I ended up sort of almost kind of semi-falling into it because it sort of just fits my mindset and what I try to do. I'm always the kind of guy that will always look for the the weird task out of the task list and try and do that one and try and do it in a slightly different way. So I guess like legal tech and legal ops kind of is that, although it's becoming way more professionalized and way more organized, I think, in the last few years.
I had a very similar experience at my law firm getting singled out as the tech guy, but this is back in the 90s, and I will not embarrass myself by telling you how weak the technology was of what I had actually done to earn that reputation. It would be laughable.
Well, that's it. You just see how much I'm the same now. I'm like, when you see some people coming to LinkedIn or whatever, and they're showing you some of the stuff they're playing with, you're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to keep quiet now. Just let those guys fly and pick it up. But but it's all like, horses for courses, right? At that moment, at that time, that was what we really needed. And I suppose that kind of comes back to like legal tech in its fullest form. Like it was about delivering something that was going to do something really useful and really powerful for us in that moment. Was it the most sexy? Was it the best way of doing it? Probably not, but actually it worked. Really gets some eyeballs and some attention.
Yeah. And you and Memme both met, as I understand, through interactions with Clock and the work you do as like advisors and being on councils there. Alex, you're still doing that? I think you started that about a year ago, right?
Yeah. So I've been going to the Clock events for a good while. I think I went to like my first Clock in Vegas back in 2017, 18 as a kind of like, we went as a team and we were like, let's go to the sort of, I guess, the mecca of it all, the big Vegas showdown and see it all there. And that was mind blowing and, super inspiring to see sort of people who had been doing it. I guess like you, Hal, you were doing it before those kind of things and you were showing what was capable, what people could do. And I just remember going from the exhibition hall and seeing like so many people and then seeing all the spin-offs, someone like a Jen McCarran way back when she was actually at Spotify, I think at the time, just kind of showing what people can do. So many like really impressive people that have, that are still in the game now. But it was cool to do that. And then, most recently I kind of took over from my GC sitting on the advisory for the European Clock sort of group. And I think it's an important thing to do, right? To pass on some, I don't know if it's wisdom, but pass on some experience of what we've been up to and hopefully try to improve this really sort of burgeoning community that we have.
Yeah. How would you compare, the legal ops communities in, the European, UK, Europe versus the United States, having been, someone who's been to Clocks on both sides of the pond?
Yeah. I guess in typical form, the US kind of does it bigger. The scale of the legal ops stuff in the US is kind of like through the roof. And I guess a little bit more history there because people were spending money and putting ideas down in the US, I think a bit quicker, a lot earlier maybe.
This is the only area in which there's more history in the US than in the UK.
Yeah, you've got us there. We've got the castles, but you guys have got the these cool advanced kind of concepts and features and skill sets and departments as well. Like seeing the maturity of some of the teams now is incredible. I guess to Memme's question, I'd say it's kind of what you might indicatively expect. Like it's a little bit behind in certain areas of, I'm closest to Europe. Some countries where I would say like it's very, very minimal. It's still a thing that, being a lawyer in those jurisdictions is still kind of a very classic role. It's very, it's hard to penetrate and disrupt in that sense. And they're not under so much pressure as they might be from like market forces to do things so differently. But then, some of the larger European countries, I know, obviously, UK has been doing it for a while now. Things like Germany, I think they've come on like leaps and bounds. Obviously, I work for a German company, so I see more and more people there. And again, they've come through that other side of being a very sort of restrictive jurisdiction to try and do things differently in. And then now, like, hitting the ground running and seeing the benefits. And then like a few curveball things, because obviously it's not all legal tech and legal ops. Like the Nordics, for example, like your Swedens and your Icelands and Norways, they're really hot on things like legal design. And they're just like a little hub out of Helsinki, just putting out amazing things from there. So I think the US is still like the Mac Daddy. It's still got the money to spend. I think it's still got the appetite to be disruptive, more so than maybe some of the classic legal jurisdictions. But Australia as well. I hear tons of good stuff from Australia. They're freed up to do some of this stuff. So it's been and I get approached from time to time by like Middle East, like Saudi, again, another country that's, got a lot of money, but also has a sort of I think they're willing to be a bit more disruptive and take a different look at things that maybe have always been traditional. So yeah, it's an exciting time. And actually, I keep rambling on, but now I think about it, every country that's coming to my mind, a place like Brazil, like tons of cool stuff going on in Brazil. Our Brazil team at Adidas are super smart. They've got so many cool ideas and they just make stuff happen. On the legal design front, they're willing to change their processes. They're willing to use tech. So it's, to try and give an actual coherent answer rather than my ramblings, it's definitely different. Culture, costs, things like that all play into it. And the US, I think, is still leading. But yeah, I think the Europeans and other parts of the world are coming to the table. And that's only a good thing, I think.
And yet, interestingly, we've got so few guardrails here right now. There's no culture for it in the current geopolitics, aside from the fact that there really wasn't that much from a data privacy standpoint to begin with. Mm-hmm. So the data sovereignty issues and cross-border issues and all of that, are always lingering in this. So when you're in a multinational company like you are, right. But that is, European headquartered. What are the implications? I'm not asking specifically for Adidas, but what do you see as the implications there for this kind of innovation that's happening, whether it's, between EMEA and the US?
Yeah, I guess that's it. I think we're obviously at interesting times. It's certainly complicated to try and be diplomatic about it. But I think everyone's waiting to see what regulators do. And I think regulators in that classic modern sense are kind of like, like they were with the social media companies, kind of like, do you guys want to regulate yourself? And it's this sort of ping pong back and forth. And it's like, I don't think we're going to, we're not finding a clever way forward fast. We see, periodically these sort of random little things that happen. Like I remember really early days, was it like Italy just banned ChatGPT for like a week and a half? And it was like, yeah, that isn't going to work. It needs a bit more nuance to that. But I think, unfortunately, in 2025, we're not really living in the age of nuance. So we're trying to sort of chart a course. And I think, from our perspective, as people just trying to make things happen, I think you just carry on as is and try to deal with the problems as and when they come up, because it's moving sands. I don't think you can chart a really hard line strategy for some of this stuff. I think it's more, maybe it'll be disappointing in the sense that people might want to keep a bit of money in their pockets just in case their ideas get kiboshed or they get restricted in certain things. But I'm not really seeing that. People are still excited. And I think that's the thing with AI, right? It's blowing minds. People are seeing huge opportunities. Yeah, from my perspective, I don't worry too much about it. I guess it's not my place to worry so much, but it's, I think there's going to be trials and tribulations. There's going to be chops and changes, but I think for now we can just keep going and trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah. And I know, as you're saying, it's a really exciting time in AI and legal right now. Mm-hmm. One of the forums that folks have been discussing that excitement is on your podcast, Law What's Next, which last time we kind of chatted deeply, I was a guest on that podcast. Excited to have you on this side of the fence as well. And I know you are leading that alongside Tom Rice. Would love for you to talk a little bit about what inspired you to co-host the podcast and what you guys talk about and why now.
Yeah. No, well, thanks so much for being a guest, first and foremost. It's really great to have someone like you on to talk about what you were doing and continue to do. Yeah, the idea behind the podcast, I know everybody seems to have a podcast now. Kind of ironic that we're saying this on a podcast, but we were just like,
stop doing that, people. We're already here.
We need fewer.
Leave it to the pros.
And everyone else can stop. We were just like, me and Tom have a great relationship. We bumped into each other at conferences and we'd have a good side chat, and then you speak to more people that you see at conferences and you think, oh, maybe the value actually is more in the side of the room than actually in the main room sometimes. And that's not always true. I've been to tons of great conferences where people have given great speeches and demos and things. But yeah, definitely tend to find that when you're on the circuit and the scene, it's those side conversations where you might find out like some juicy real tidbits of like, oh, we're doing this and I'm willing to tell you about it kind of on the side. So the concept really was just like, could we take some of those side conversations with people that we find interesting and just sort of publish them really? So I guess a bit like you guys, we have a very similar conversational style, which we enjoy. We're not beholden to anyone. So we just say, like, let's have a conversation. We've had some lovely comments because, I think we recognize that we are in a privileged position in our roles to go to some of these events. It's not always cheap. It's not always possible. And people are busy, and getting access to some of the guests we've had, would be challenging maybe for some people who are just looking for inspiration and they don't necessarily have that network. So yeah, that was it in a nutshell. Just keep doing some of these and talking to interesting people. And as long as we find it fun and the guests find it fun, then we'll carry on doing it. And it's kind of spawned into a few other things. Like we have a Substack now, so we write some articles here and there. Really interesting that actually the articles seem to tend to do even better than the podcast sometimes. And I guess that's because lawyers still read. Like maybe we're the last group of people that are still willing to read long form. So yeah, on some of the long form stuff, we've had like really good engagement, and you're like, oh yeah, because lawyers still read. So maybe it's good to have both sort of mediums to speak to people. But yeah, it's just something that me and Tom enjoy doing. So we thought, why not? And throw another podcast into the ring and keep people busy.
Well, we're enjoying it, and hope you keep doing it. One of the areas you get into, and you're very blunt about, which I like, and I'm hoping we can do that here, is just getting real about AI trends. All right. So what is the readiness in the legal sphere that you're seeing for AI agents? And, agents obviously triggers a whole, it's a spectrum of autonomy, right?
Yeah.
And we're at an early stage of it, and we all know that. And we're all looking ahead, and we have different feelings about where that's going to be in a few years. What do you see right now, though, as a level of readiness for these sort of earlier stages of agentic and what that really means?
I'm kind of like usually a bit of a centrist on most things. I don't know if I'm just chickening out by always being sitting on the fence, or whether it feels like the reality is more down the line. I love hearing people that are at the other ends of the spectrum, because it's so fascinating to hear people who are like, it's never going to work, or other people that are like, plug it into everything. We need to do it. Let's get 1 million agents tomorrow. But I'm definitely somewhere more down the middle. And I would say like what I'm seeing and hearing is more, I don't think legal departments, because obviously I'm more from an in-house perspective, like we definitely don't have our stuff together because it hasn't really been that much of a priority. So like,
and what does that mean to have?
Sorry, yeah,
what do you need to get together?
Yeah. Like the sort of the housekeeping or the data or the, even just some, like if we contextualize it in contracts, which most people can kind of, if you speak to some people about agentic in contracts or with contract vendors, it's like, so we plug it into the playbook and then we do XYZ. And I'm like, 90% of people won't have a playbook. Like that's a reality thing. And it might feel shocking if you're coming at it from more of a tech background or a vendor background, or you're dealing with really large companies who have been doing certain things in certain ways for a period of time. But there is a stark contrast sometimes between like what people are wanting to put out there, as in like, oh yeah, we would do this and we would do that. And it's like, oh yeah, you don't really have these playbooks, and you don't have them certainly for the whole suite of things you're looking for. And when were they last updated, and are they still relevant, and like what's missing from them? And like, I think when you start to peel back layers of that onion, you realize like the readiness in some of those senses is not there. Not to say things like that can't be like rapidly remedied, but it takes like it's not a plug and play scenario that, again, depending on what your perspective is, you might want to push that it is more of that than the reality is. So right. I'm always like, to your point, I always sort of like, let's just be real. And AI agents look amazing in certain scenarios, and particularly if it's like within the walls of a specific tool where we can be a little bit safer and we can play, and we know that we're not giving it access to payments and SAP. We're not giving it access to all of this extra personal data that it doesn't need to. It's actually within the confines of this really well-built tool already, and that's where we're going to let the agents operate. That's something that we could scale pretty quickly, and we could get our ducks in a row and deliver something really good. But I think generally speaking, people talk about it or think about it in this wider sense of like, it's an agent to just replace a lawyer and we're going to give it access to all these different things. I think when people start to look at it in that level, they realize they're not there. And then, even really simply, like to make a sort of stupid point of it, if you want an agent to do something for you, you should probably know what it is you want them to do. And I don't think many lawyers or head of a legal team could actually really articulate what that thing is straight off the bat.
When you say that they don't know what that thing is they don't know how to tell it what to do, like they don't know the specifics, or they don't know what the goal is, or is it both?
I would say both in some scenarios. Like, obviously, it's so hard to paint a broad brush for everyone. Of course, there's people that are all over it, but generally speaking, like, I think the practice of law in businesses a lot of the time is literally seat of your pants. Like, it's firefighting, as all the cliches. But like, there's plenty of times where you might think you know what you tell it, or you might think you know what the process is or what the business does, but usually the people that are thinking that are quite a sort of a few levels removed from the actual doing. And I've had tons of conversations with heads of legal or a GC where they say, oh, we do it like this. And then you speak to someone who actually does it and they go, no, that was the process from 3 years ago. He doesn't realize that this happened. He doesn't know that these people now do this. Or, when someone says like, oh, we've automated NDAs, and that becomes like a headline for everyone, like the AIs have been, NDAs have been resolved. But what you don't realize is that paralegal still does all of the NDAs that aren't resolved. But in the mind of the GC who's doing that, AI is like, I keep saying AI and NDA. NDAs are off the shelf then. Like, we fixed NDAs. And it's like, no, you kind of did some cool stuff and it might have been on the way to being fixed, but you did that 3 years ago. And actually it's Bob who takes care of 20% of the ones that fall over. But in your mind, you don't have 20% of Bob's resource being put against NDAs because NDAs have been solved. And this is the kind of thing that I sort of rant and rave a little bit and get excited about, because it's like, it's reality, right? These things happen in way more organic ways than we realize. Businesses change, people leave, processes get forgotten, tweaks happen, and actually all of the stuff that you thought you built and the way you think things happen are not true. And if that person was the same person that said, yeah, I'm the person that sets up the system prompts for the agent, they're going to be setting up something that's wrong and then potentially maybe getting frustrated by the responses of the AI output and not realizing, well, you've set this thing up to fail because you haven't delivered the baseline that it needs and you haven't given it the instruction it needs, and your sort of expectations were way off. That's kind of where I'm coming from that perspective.
So perhaps a big focus for the coming year or so, this preliminary step ought to be leverage AI to learn what you've done and what it is that you do, and evaluate whether that's good. And hey, I just realized completely coincidentally, I'm pretty sure this aligns beautifully to one of your advent calendar things. So this you've introduced this advent calendar with, the things that, you really should be looking at within this space for legal ops. And one of the ones that I flagged that I really like, try simplifying a process before trying to automate it.
Right. Exactly.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah.
I mean, that speaks to what you're talking about. It's like, what should be in your playbook? If you're not agreeing to something 85 or not holding out for something 85% of the time, you're caving on this thing. Why is it in your playbook? Is it really important that you ever hold out for it?
Yeah, totally. And again, like, sands are changing, things move. Like, when you built that playbook, did you realize that you had the power that a CLM might have been able to deliver? Like, people built something with the situation that was in mind at that time. And sometimes you're like, oh, let's not put in these 3 fallback provisions because that's going to, I'm using an old school system and I'm going to have to, code all of those in. Nowadays, you might be like, let's put in 5. Like, the AI can handle that. Let's be real, So again, I think it's that mixture of like not being prepared in the sense of like, this was never priority before because you could never really leverage some of that work. It wouldn't give you enough ROI in your legal department that was struggling with time to polish these kind of things and keep the crown jewels of all the knowledge management. Whereas now, like, that's the play, right? That's what we're looking for in the future, is to say, now it's worth your time to do that because you're going to be able to get some agents to do some of the, the heavy lifting as long as you prepare this stuff. So the game is changing there. And I think, to your point, like, yeah, that's why cleaning the house now, having one eye on the future, maybe using some AI tools that are focused on getting you to where you're going to be able to unlock future AI in the future is going to be a useful use of your time. And that's kind of what I'm touching upon in the infamous Advent calendar, which, yeah, it's its 4th year now. And I think the thing that's funny about it is that even though we're 4 years into the Advent calendar, the concept for this year is even more basic. So I think I was joking at the start, like, all of the conversation is about the bleeding edge of AI. And actually what I'm trying to do is talk about the actual opposite of that, which is just like the baseline and like, how do we organize ourselves in a sensible and scalable way so that we're ready to then take this stuff and go to the moon. And it isn't the sexiest stuff. And some of it, as you're reading out that description, I'm thinking, oh, maybe that was too simple, but it definitely gets resonation. People DM me all the time from pretty large companies saying like, oh yeah, like we don't do that. I'm going to remind the team like, yeah, like why don't we try and simplify some of these crazy processes instead of automating them as is? Or, why don't we go back and just look at some of the content in this document rather than, trying to make it into something way more complicated. So yeah, I think it's maybe not the sexiest, like I say, and maybe I'm a bit boring for some of it, but I think that's where the reality lives. And I think what it's doing is then creating space for the really good stuff, like the stuff that's going to be genuinely disruptive, that's here / literally just around the corner, depending on where you're at.
Yeah. What does that look like? Because I'll bring up something else that you hear as you go to different legal ops events and talk to folks in the community, which is, CLM's going to be dead soon, right? I'm going to be able to just kind of build my different agents and do these things and kind of break it down into its component parts of functions and then do a homegrown kind of solution, right? And I'm kind of curious your thoughts, given where you said the state of agents might actually kind of, be for many folks. Kind of what do you think about folks on that other side of the coin?
Yeah. I mean, like I say, like on one hand, I love it because I'm like, whoa, like you guys are thinking about something on like a totally different level, and you can kind of try and start getting your head around like what that could be. And then I swing back the other way where I'm like, that is insane. That is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. I don't, I'm kind of going from left to right and then eventually land back at the middle. And I'm like, yeah, maybe there is a future where some of this looks very, very different. But I think the lag on that and the reality of that is so strong that, I like to think there's going to be humans involved in lots of stuff for a long, long time, that it still makes sense that, of course, you're still going to want like a CLM that's robust, that's very user-friendly from a human perspective, that, has the bells and whistles of some of these features, but ultimately, that you could even use it if you didn't have access to the internet for 12 hours. Like it's still got an element of like, it's a structured set of data, things are where I expect them to be. I'm still reading text with my eyes. Like it's all sensible, real stuff. And I think I'm just, again, like I say, more of that really cool nebulous stuff, like to be seen. I can kind of see the concepts that people are talking about, but I think when you're at the coal face of doing it on the day to day, I'm more just like, how do we move this on incrementally, and maybe jump a few steps where we can, but ultimately you still have a ton of humans, a ton of legacy systems, a ton of legacy processes that you need to drag along with you, or build the bridge in front of you as you're moving along. So it doesn't occupy too much of my mind, other than it being a kind of like an interesting sort of almost like problem statement or a crazy idea. But yeah, for the reality, I'm still thinking, yeah, there's going to be CLM, there's going to be improvements to CLM, there's going to be novel ways of using CLM, and maybe some people who haven't used CLM are going to enter it at a really interesting future time. But yeah, ultimately, I'm not a big like SaaS is dead, CLM is dead, everything's dead. So yeah, I'm not a big believer in that.
Yeah, I think the CLM being dead concept is good as like a thought process.
Yeah.
Because people will talk about, well, we'll just have agents and we'll have governance around the agents and that'll be the equivalent. You ask them, okay, well, that makes perfect sense. What kind of governance is going to be needed around those agents? Well, you're talking about data access. Okay, that's really important, and data structure. Well, you're talking about accountability and audit trail, because you need to know where the approvals went and all the things that happen, and undue actions and version control and all that. And then you talk about user provisioning and things like, and by the time you're done, it's like, yeah, well, that's a CLM.
You built a CLM. Yeah.
It's like maybe the point is less that CLM, won't be needed, and more about CLM will look different. It's gonna be way more flexible, way more ad hoc, way more adaptable to what you're actually doing and what you actually need.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that excites me about some of the AI in the SaaS world or in the building world, is like it potentially has the ability just to, break down some of those really established four walls, and you could make, way more dynamic experiences depending on like who the user is. Like their experience of CLM could be totally different to the lawyer's version of CLM. And I know it is kind of already, because depending on what you get access to in modules, of certain platforms, but I could definitely see the world where, because you're able to build in such a nuanced way or deliver something, that's totally different, but it cost effectively, you could still deliver something like that. I really am interested in that idea of, what does CLM look like from a procurement person's perspective versus what does it look like from the end user perspective, who they have one contract and they look at it once every 3 years. Like what's their vision of that world? What's CLM to them? And could one platform deliver that, because you're able to deliver using AI and agents such a different experience? I think the core of the product is still going to remain the same for the lawyers who want this big, beastie system that's kind of touching everything. But the ability to deliver something more nuanced and personalized, again, I think that's a really cool and interesting thing, because I think, again, people who, when you get lost in contracts because you're a contracts lawyer, you really do lose sense of like just what people understand as being a contract, what people want out of a contract. If you think about it from a business perspective, if you're a salesperson, a contract is probably just like a tick in a box that confirms you're probably going to get your commission for that sale. And it's not your duty to look at it beyond that, really. Like it's for other people to, so the lawyers to look at it from a risk perspective, or if you're looking at it from a procurement perspective, it's probably more about how you're showing like savings, or how you're showing like obligation management, like once the contract's alive. And we see that tons of times in real life where, when we talk about executing a contract, for example, as a lawyer, I mean like signing the contract and like getting it's like an executed copy, it's ready, or at least in the UK, that's what that terminology would mean. But when I say that to a German business colleague, they're like, yeah, execute the contract, as in like live the contract, as in, like live it, like it's alive now, and now we live the provisions of it, and we do these things. Whereas, so even terminology from that perspective is totally different on a sort of skill set, culture, location, geography, all of those things. So yeah, it's I don't see CLM going away very fast, to be honest.
Yeah, I like the idea of kind of the most more personalized, experience for different folks, engaging with the same documents, but who have different goals and perspectives, and that's reflected in their engagement with it. I wonder, for folks who might be listening, but maybe they're curmudgeons, right? Maybe they're struggling to imagine what it looks like for AI and agents to kind of transform.
Curmudgeons on our podcast? Come on. We have the best audience in the industry.
No, but we have a diverse audience, right? We have the best curmudgeons, if they are curmudgeons.
And they're the best because we don't pander to them. Okay,
exactly. We challenge them every time. But I'm wondering, what would you tell to someone who's maybe having difficulty imagining what it looks like for AI and agents to, transform what it looks like to engage with contracts and these kind of commercial processes?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, everything on AI so far has been, you have to feel it, you have to play with it, you got to understand it. And I think not just in the obvious sense of like, just get a ChatGPT account and just ask it some stupid questions. I think there's a value in that for some people, depending on how curmudgeonly you are and how out of touch necessarily you are with some of the tech. But I think, getting your hands around some of this stuff and seeing like where the limits are, where the limits are beyond your expectations. So if you can demo some stuff, if you can get access to licenses, if you can sit next to someone who is an evangelist and let them, push them, ask them. But I definitely think you have to see it, because AI is just one of those things that it's so radically different to what we've experienced in recent times that I think it's one of those technologies that it's so easy to massively overestimate what it can do, and also so massively underestimate what it can do. And if you have no frames of reference, then that's, sorry, Hal, you could say something.
Which is legal doing now, in your experience more?
Good question.
Overestimating or underestimating?
I think for the majority, it's probably, I don't know if overestimating is the right word, but on the Gartner hype cycle, I think we're at the peak of inflated expectation. Like I definitely hear, like we haven't come down and then on the plateau yet, in my personal view. But I think, and I say that more because I still hear plenty of people saying stuff like, maybe we could get the AI to do it. I'm like, oh, you don't, that's great, because you're like, oh, it's in your brain and you're thinking there's this thing that could do this thing. But it does show an element of like naivety and misunderstanding of necessarily, the AI, like we could get the AI to do it. And you're like,
Yeah.
that is pretty bonkers as a statement if you know what you're talking about. So, but again, I'm enthused by it because it's like, well, at least you're saying that, because I don't think you would have said that 5 years ago to say like, could we get the no code platform to do it? Could we get the e-discovery system to, like, people don't really see those tools, but because they're hearing and seeing it in their personal life and kind of everywhere, they're really saying that out loud, which is cool. And then it kind of comes back to the point of like, no, it probably can't do that thing because what even is that thing that you're trying to say? Like, you need to articulate yourself better. Bad prompting gets bad outcomes generally, but also like, this is a very niche thing, and we need to probably look at the market to say like, has anyone looked at this? And if they have looked at it, is it scalable? Is it robust? Is it safe? Like all those good things. And the feedback, you get back from people talking about like, something simple as like Copilot, which is a touch point for a lot of people. They'll say things like, oh, I think it was great for these things. And then I asked it to do a PowerPoint slide and it did it for me, but it would have been great if it could have done like in our style and like used our imagery and done this kind of stuff. And it's like, I think, again, there's sort of this realization that people, once they start using it, they see where the ceilings are, they see where the opportunities are. And I think that's realistically what they need to do. And I think also, if you could bolt on the side of that, doing like maybe just like the bones AI literary course for something like the basic, like what even is this and how does it work? I think lawyers are equipped with the mind that they could understand that and start to conceptualize in a much more sensible way, which means when they come to market and they want to do stuff, or they want to speak to their tech team or their legal ops team if they have one, they can come with a much sort of rounded and more sensible initial proposition that's got legs in it, rather than just like, okay, can AI do this? Or we want to use the AI for this, and they don't really know what that means.
I got to say, I'm intrigued by your answer, and I'm a little surprised by it. I think that speaks a lot to the world that you're in and the way that you've got this role where you're empowering the team so that they think in terms of big things they can do. And I say that because the other day I hosted a roundtable, and I was surprised that I wasn't hearing bigger goals and expectations. I was hearing, within the contract realm, I was just hearing, just extract well. We just want, just some good extractions, from the thing. And I'm like, extractions, wow. Like you can do so much more now, think bigger. And so I'm intrigued that you're actually seeing people now overestimating in some cases and then having to reconcile with the limitations.
Yeah, I think it's a rapid journey. And like you say, I guess it comes from where people are at, like where you find them at, and meeting people where they're at is usually the sort of key to some of this stuff. But yeah, that's interesting that people say that. I suppose maybe if people have a very defined use case in mind that is actually sensible for AI, they're the ones who are like, oh, I just want to see reliability. I just want to see like, you hit these basics, and that's what would actually really excite me. Whereas, yeah, I guess you have other people who are in more of this, it's more of a fantasy land, like what could we do scenario, because they're not sort of wedded to some tech already or a use case that they have in mind. So it's just a really complex ecosystem of people trying to figure some stuff out. And I think I was at a meeting recently where I was saying, all of this new technology, and then it was that day was the third anniversary of ChatGPT launching to like the public. And I was like, oh, wow, like this isn't even really new now, is it? And obviously, I know you guys are looking at, this way before that public release. So for you guys, it's not new at all. But yeah, it's really interesting to see how things lag, how things play out, and how different stimulus, I guess, like promote someone into thinking about this in a totally different way. So yeah, if you're the curmudgeon or the laggard behind some of this stuff, there's tons of stuff you can do now, right? So much free stuff. I suppose that's another like kind of boon of AI, that there is plenty of stuff that you can try some really cool stuff and you get a ton of credits to do it. It's not like, one click and you're out kind of thing. Like I appreciate that the AI boom is funding some of this stuff, but whilst it's there, I would encourage people to play, and play is definitely the best way to understand AI, I think.
I think curmudgeons and laggards, we've got our title for this episode.
I do want to shift gears a little bit and, just see if there's any legal ops projects at Adidas currently that you're particularly excited about, or maybe just legal tech innovations more generally that you're interested in that excite you these days.
I mean, generally speaking, again, like just keep going back to my same thing. Like I like the slow and steady. So I do like all of these like RAG based kind of, it's not the sexiest, but like all of these, get a chatbot and sit it on top of a ton of data, or, if you're a large corporate, like, lawyers' time is just cannibalized so much by, I think if lawyers talking to lawyers would say stupid questions or like low level, low value repeat questions, I think if you're being kinder, you just be like, yeah, this is the business just asking and needing a bit of support and hand holding. You know, some of that stuff is just you're putting it in a different format. So you've written a 20-page policy, but it's 2025 now. So people don't read a 25-page policy. They read, they want to ask, they want to query it. That's the new way of like familiarizing yourself with a whole bunch of text. So why not, they could take it out and stick it into ChatGPT and you kind of, it's all off chain then, you don't know what's going on. But what might make more sense is to sort of meet that challenge head on and say, like, how do we control this as legal and say, well, we know people are going to do this. We know this is how the business wants to like receive information and deal with these things. Let's put it in a tool that legal has the keys to. They can moderate it. They can understand what's happening and what isn't happening and, utilize it in the best way. Rather than just sort of fingers in the ears, like, oh, we put out the policy. These people are so stupid. They can't even read a policy, and it's like, you do hear people talk like that because they're like, oh God, we've got this mail from these guys again, asking the same question. And it's like, well, we're in this era now where you can deal with those in very, it feels sophisticated, but it's very simple. And you can utilize some of that, knowledge and documentation that you have. I would definitely say there's a huge shift in the last 2 years of people are coming to me and I'm not going to them. It used to be about banging the drum and going like, come on guys, you must know now there's a better way of doing this. And now we have a flurry of people like, hey Alex, could I do this? Could I put this into, could we use a large language model that could do this? Or do we have a tool that might be able to achieve this end? And like, that is totally a flip, like totally a 180 on some of this stuff. So, that's what's exciting to me because the best ideas are going to come from these people who have real problems to solve. And I've been out of doing the day-to-day of the work that I'm sort of now slightly far removed. I'd be that GC that says, oh no, but don't you do it like this? And like, no, we used to do that 5 years ago. You're old hat. We need these people to come through and say, this is a problem. I recognize that tech is all here now and AI can do this really cool stuff. And I kind of understand enough to know that I think this is something we could do. Please help me. And we go from there. And that's definitely what we're seeing more and more now, which is fantastic.
All right. Well, I know you can't get specific about anything at Adidas, but generally speaking, as you look ahead at all those things and as these inquiries are coming in, is there some kind of technology, some use case, some capability that you see and you be like, wow, that would be game changing?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. Is there something that's totally different that's kind of blowing my mind? I guess from my perspective, like I'm probably looking more towards like knowledge management type areas of thinking. So like as a lawyer, knowledge management was always something that I was interested in. But like I said before, was like I wasn't getting the value out of that because, again, I guess like being an attorney in a law firm, you're kind of like, well, no one's going to add the extra billables on my sheet if they take my amazing precedent that I've got. Whereas in-house, it was always a little bit more, fair, like you're all pulling together for the company. But yeah, I'm starting to see a few more things where like, I think that's going to become unlocked massively because the problem was like, who in the hell wants to tag a ton of documents? Who in the hell wants to fill in the metadata and come up with a taxonomy that's going to be, like that everyone can follow? Who in the heck wants to like repaper all of these documents or reanalyze all of these clauses and stuff like that? So like, I think from my perspective, like that's where I think we're going to see a massive level up. I think legal is just going to get way more, like the quality is going to jump up through there. And that's excites me as a lawyer who got into legal tech that didn't hate being a lawyer. Like I could really imagine myself wanting to go back and use some of these tools to do those tasks that would have been a write-off because you just couldn't legitimately find the time to do that. And I think it's some of that stuff becomes like really strategic. Like it starts to test the brain in a totally different way. Like being a lawyer where you have a bit of a bandwidth to look at like the real nuance in like a certain line in a contract or like how is this being perceived? We can look at the data and look back and say, this is killing negotiations. Let's move that to this part. Let's tweak that word. That word is killing it. Like everyone hates that word. We change the word.
Heretofore. Can I just say right now, that's the word.
Get rid of it. Yeah. Here with the undersigned, blah, blah, blah. You're just like, dude, let's kill that. But it's
actually, I think reasonable is the word that they want to kill. that one really does mess up contracts a lot of the time. Yeah, that's practical. That's such a simple, practical thing. It's like using the intelligence to actually figure out something that's wrong that we just can't see because we live with it every day.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe the theme as well as laggards is I think I'm a relatively simple man in terms of some of this stuff that like, I just want to see some of the simple baseline stuff get to where it needs to get to.
Yeah.
And I think when I talk to people about like, obviously that some of the narrative around AI is about like replacing people. And I think what I prefer to think of is like leveling up in the sense of like, I don't want to get rid of headcounts and change people like that. I want to see lawyers doing legal work that's interesting and exciting and that taxes their brain and makes them want to come to work in the day. Yeah, I can see that being like, yeah, it could become a totally different ball game to be a commercial contracts lawyer in the next like 2 years, 3 years, or whatever your timeline is, because you're just thinking about so many different things instead of being bogged down with formatting and cross-references and all the stuff that took time and was important and remains important. But now this like ability to analyze your own work, analyze the work of others, compare, contrast, think about things strategically because you have some bandwidth to do that. I think it's going to become a really like, it's going to raise the bar even more. And that excites me.
I wonder though, I mean, you say you don't want to take away headcount from everyone, and that's great. But what are you seeing in the current job market? And I'd say twofold. One, from a legal ops perspective, where, folks may think they're being automated, but I think also AI is making legal departments realize they need legal ops more than ever. So what are you seeing on that side? And then with your dual hat on the lawyer side, right? Are the worries of, first year lawyers never being hired again, coming to fruition? Or just what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm closer to the legal ops one, generally speaking, just at a glance, but like, yeah, it's just not a bad time to be in legal ops by any means. Like, I'm definitely seeing some really cool roles and more frequent roles, and roles at companies where they probably don't have a huge team, but they've recognized that a legal ops person or someone with closer skill sets to that is going to add value to them. So it's not a show pony anymore that it might have been for some people. It definitely has some, they expect a return on investment for that. There's a girl, Ellie Meenan, she does like the legal ops job board that she publishes every week or every 2 weeks. And you just see like tons of stuff on there. So yeah, I think for obvious reasons, like legal ops is in a bit of a boom stage. They need people to translate some of this stuff for lawyers and to help with implementations and try to come up with a strategy. I'd say on the legal counsel stuff, like I'm still heartened to see, I see plenty of roles coming up, like people still want to hire. You see a lot of more senior roles still coming up. So yeah, whether there's a bit of a churn on the juniors, but I don't think we're quite there yet, right? Like I think there's still, I don't know if people are seeing the ROI so much that they're like, I don't want to have these junior people doing stuff, but it obviously is a concern that like, that's a whole topic that we, whole separate podcast. I'm sure you get someone better than me to talk about it, but like what being a junior lawyer looks like in terms of like your exposure to work and like how your training happens versus what it used to be in the good old days, but also like not being too nostalgic about that. Like there's plenty of things about being a junior lawyer that just sucked and was just like terrible and didn't make me a better person and didn't make me any better at the law. But so like I don't think it's all like doom and gloom on that side, but I don't think you need to despair too much if you're a junior. But it's also a key time to learn the heck out of this stuff. You want to rock up in day one knowing this stuff and knowing what you can bring and knowing where it might cause you some issues, but also where you can showcase to the, we still have the structure that these older partners not going to know. They still don't know how to convert a Word document into a PDF, and they sure as hell don't know how to make an AI agent. So you should learn that and blow their minds on day one.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you and getting your insights.
Thanks for having me. It's been great, and look forward to hearing some future exciting episodes. I enjoyed the Laura Franks one recently, so yeah, it's great to be on. Thank you.
We'll be doing the same with Law. What's next? Keep it up.
Cheers, man.
Meeting of the Minds, the Legal AI podcast, is brought to you by Eversort. To learn more about Eversort and how we can help you contract better with AI, visit Eversort, EVISORT.com.
You can find Meeting of the Minds on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to click subscribe so you won't miss future episodes.
On behalf of everyone here at Eversort, thanks for tuning in.